Welcome to Frontington and Backwoods Railway. This steam engine needs more wires. It's safe to say that the Small Prairie is my absolute favourite Great Western locomotive. It's elegant, well-proportioned, nicely balanced, not too big but not too small, powerful for its weight, and pretty versatile. And in model form, I've always loved this Bachmann model, even though it's not brand new. It was a mainstay of my old layout, running reliably and smoothly through my Gaugemaster analog DC controller. But the new iteration of the layout runs on DCC, so this loco needs to go digital. And to do that, I first need to play around with my other locomotive. You see, while the Small Prairie is lovely, it's not DCC ready, which means that it doesn't have a convenient socket for a DCC decoder. This 5600 does, so I'm going to test my new decoder in here first. The first step in getting the body off the 5600 is to carefully turn it over. The screws holding it together are hidden underneath the coupling hooks, so I'm using a small screwdriver to gently prise the couplings out. The plastic is quite thin and flimsy, so you need to be careful. Next, with the screws revealed, it's just a case of unscrewing them. I'm doing this on a white board so I can clearly see where everything is. There's nothing else holding the body in place, so you just carefully lift it off the chassis, being careful to watch those sandpipes around the rearmost driving wheels. While this loco did come DCC ready from the factory, it didn't come with a decoder. I added that myself. I used a LaisDCC decoder, on the basis that it was dirt cheap. I've since heard that there are some legal issues around LaisDCC, so I'm not going to recommend this chip, but it works just fine. Now, before I test the new decoder, it's worth seeing how the LaisDCC decoder performs, just for comparison. I'm using JMRI on my laptop, which I'm going to use here to reset all the settings on the chip. And out of the box, it actually works really well. There is some acceleration there already, although it's nowhere near realistic in portraying the weight and momentum of a steam locomotive. Right, let's get that decoder out. It's a bit tight, so getting the decoder out takes a little careful wiggling with the end of a screwdriver, but I got there eventually. The new decoder I bought is a Gaugemaster Ruby series DCC92. It's a small decoder, billed as being perfect for retrofitting into smaller locos, especially those that were not originally DCC ready. And when they say small, they really do mean small. This thing is tiny. It's almost half the size of the LaisDCC one. I'll have to make sure I don't sneeze, otherwise it might blow away and never be seen again. So now I just need to install this in the 5600. But which way round does it go? I can't remember. And there are no markings on the plug or the socket. Instructions? No. Oh, I know. I can compare it to the decoder I've just taken out and match up the wire colours. This one is hard to get in too, so it must be the socket that's tight rather than the decoder plug. Still, it's in, so let's see if it works. First of all, I'm putting it on my programming track to see if JMRI will recognise it. And yep, there's Gaugemaster in the list, so it must be this one. I won't go into the settings for now, let's just see if it works. Hurrah! Well, that seems to work nicely. It does seem to be driving the motor faster than the LaisDCC chip did, but I can tweak that in the settings later. For now, I can at least see that it's working in both directions, so we're good. Now, back to my small prairie. Now that lamp is a little loose, so I'll remove that now so I don't lose it. And like with the 5600, the body on this loco is held on with 2 screws, and again, they're hidden underneath the couplings. They're a bit tricky to get to, but you don't actually need to take anything else apart. It was a bit tight, and I had to double check a few times that there wasn't anything I'd missed, but in the end it just took a little bit of wiggling and the body came off. Now, this loco predates DCC, so there's no socket. But there is that little circuit board just in front of the motor that the wires from the pickups come through. To be honest, I'm not sure what those little coils do. If you know, please comment below, because I'm really intrigued. In any case, I should be able to solder the decoder to that circuit board to save cutting any of the wires. There are these little yellow capacitors soldered around the motor, which I understand are there to prevent interference with analog TV signals, although I can't imagine that's going to be important these days, now that TV is digital. Now, I've heard that you're meant to remove those for DCC operation, although I noticed that the DCC-ready 5600 had them too. So I'll leave the capacitors where they are. I'm sure it'll be fine. Touching the solder pads with a soldering iron allows me to remove the existing wires from that circuit board. I'm holding it in place with a helping hand, and using tweezers so I don't burn my fingers. It's all pretty straightforward actually. I've got 2 wires coming from the pickups, and 2 wires for the motor. Actually, the scariest part of this is actually that I just need to cut this plug socket off the decoder, as I can't use that bit. Yep, there's no going back now. Now, I don't need all of these wires for now, but I do need to strip the insulation off the ones I am using. And these wires are quite thin. I wonder if my wire strippers will cope with this. I'm going to try it on one of the wires I'm not using, just to be safe. And yes, that works, so I'll strip the other wires too. And now it's just a case of soldering the wires to the pickup board, and the red and black wires to the motor wires, and I'll insulate those joins with electrical tape later. For now, let's just see whether the motor will respond. Hooray! Oh, actually that is a bit jerky. I'm not sure if that's mechanical or dirty wheels or something else. Seems a bit better now. No, something's definitely wrong. It's not behaving as well as it did on the 5600. Well, the first step is always to reset the decoder, which I can do using JMRI. I'm not going to tweak any of the other settings for now. Track power on. Choose the locomotive. Forwards. Okay. Forwards again. Okay. Oh, it's not stopping.
Stop. 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 Panic. Stop. No, that's not stopping either. It's just got a mind of its own. Whoa. So it'll accelerate.
Well, I couldn't see what I'd done wrong, so I asked for advice on Facebook. And some people said I should reset the decoder, which I had already done. Some people said I should have bought a higher quality decoder in the first place, which wasn't particularly helpful. Some people said that I should change CV29 to disable DC running, which I tried, but it didn't make any difference. Some people said that Gaugemaster gets Digitracks to make their chips, so I should ask them instead. One person mentioned that she had experienced similar runaway behaviour in the past, and that for her it was always the capacitors causing interference with the decoder. Wait, the capacitors? So I'll leave the capacitors where they are. I'm sure it'll be fine. Should have seen that coming. Well, the motor is held in place with this little cradle, so it's just a case of prising the ends apart slightly and the motor will pop out. That makes it much easier to see what's going on. Removing those capacitors is nice and easy, and then I could reinstall the motor in the cradle. The verdict? Well, it now works perfectly. I've actually put in some slightly higher acceleration and deceleration values already, but you can see how it gets up to speed and is able to stop again now. Problem solved. It was those pesky capacitors after all. I'll need to fine-tune the acceleration and speeds, but yeah, this is a pretty good start. I did go back and tidy up the soldering slightly, as I wasn't entirely satisfied with my first attempt. And of course some electrical tape was needed to ensure nothing shorted and caused an explosion. And then it was just a case of positioning the decoder and the wires so it would all go into the body. Fortunately, there's an empty space in the front of the body where the smoke box is, and the decoder sits in there quite nicely. Getting the body to go back on was a bit of a pain, just because the wires kept moving and getting caught, but I got there in the end. The result of my hard work is that I now have 2 DCC-equipped locomotives to play with. There's likely to be more tweaking of settings, but JMRI makes that a doddle. Here's a few running shots. Well, I hope you found that useful and insightful. Top tips from this experience are that the Gaugemaster DCC92 decoder is excellent so far and should fit anywhere. And if you do get runaway issues, removing the capacitors does indeed seem to help. So now I'm going to play some more. And when I finish procrastinating, I'll be installing the track for the sidings, so watch out for that in a future video. But that's all for today. Bye for now.